In 2019, a Brazilian gang leader tried escaping from his 73-year prison sentence by disguising himself as his teenage daughter who was visiting. He planned on leaving her behind in his place, but the guards weren't fooled by his disguise and stopped him at the exit. In 1962, a 10-year-old boy from Mexico City found an industrial radioactive capsule and left it in the kitchen cabinet of his home. Within a few months, the boy, his pregnant mother, his 2-year-old sister, and his grandmother all died from severe radiation sickness. In 2013, a Brazilian soccer referee was involved in a heated argument with a player and ended up stabbing him to death. Outraged fans quickly stormed the field before stoning him to death, decapitating him, and putting his head on a stake in the middle of the field. George Wallace was a governor of Alabama who openly supported Jim Crow and segregation. Once his term was over, he helped get his wife elected so that he could subvert his term limit and stay in office. To do so, he kept her cancer diagnosis a secret from her, knowing that the treatment would negatively affect her ability to run. Thus, the first female governor of Alabama died within 200 days of her term. Dewey the cat died in 1910, but meant enough to his owner to be honored with a gravestone that still stands 113 years later. It reads, "He was only a cat, but he was human enough to be a great comfort in hours of loneliness and pain." In 1950, herpetologist Kevin Budden caught a deadly taipan snake by hand and hitchhiked to town while holding it. At some point, he lost his grip and was bitten, but managed to bag the snake and made a random truck driver promise to get it to researchers. Kevin succumbed to the venom the next day, but the driver kept his promise, and the snake was used to create the first taipan antivenom in history. Mark Wahlberg was addicted to cocaine by the age of 13 and had committed at least 20 criminal offenses by the time he turned 21. In 1988, he was arrested for the unprovoked racist attack of 2 Vietnamese Americans and left one of the victims blind. Marky Mark was initially charged with attempted murder, but only ended up serving 45 days in prison since he was only 16. Here's a video of professional violinist Dagmar Turner playing her instrument while doctors removed a tumor from her brain. They asked her to play the violin during the surgery to ensure that her musical abilities weren't damaged by the delicate procedure. In 2017, an American man consumed a ghost pepper in an eating contest and had to drink 6 glasses of water to cool off. He then vomited so many times that he tore a hole in his esophagus and was rushed to the emergency room where doctors found his left lung had nearly collapsed. He spent 23 days in the hospital and was sent home with a gastric tube. According to a 2014 investigation, the car that Paul Walker died in had tires that were 9 years old. This likely contributed to Paul's racer friend losing control while driving around a corner at 93 miles per hour. It's a tragic example of why you should always change your tires after 6 years no matter how much they've been used. Roughly 200 people die on cruise ships each year, especially on those that carry a lot of seniors. So most ships have a small morgue on board prepared to store up to 10 bodies. In 2002, 13-year-old hockey fan Brittany Cecil was sitting in the stands of a Blue Jackets game when a deflected puck struck her in the temple, fracturing her skull. She died just 2 days before her birthday and remains the only fan fatality in NHL history. In November of 2021, zipline instructor Joaquin Romero fell to his death after sacrificing himself to save a customer. He had to let go of the zipline because he knew it would be too heavy to hold both he and his client, so he decided that he would be the one to die. French journalist Victor Noir is more famous for his grave than his work. In 1870, he was shot dead by Napoleon's nephew and had a grave erected of him lying down as if he was just killed. Because of an obvious bulge in its pants, the grave has become a popular fertility symbol among women. Legend tells that those who kiss the statue on the lips, place a flower in his hat, and rub the genital area will experience enhanced fertility. As a result, the lips and bulge are noticeably shiny from the thousands of people who have followed the legend over the years. Jeffrey Dahmer refused to eat people with tattoos because he said the ink made the flesh taste weird. Be safe, get inked. In 1979, 16-year-old Brenda Ann Spencer killed 2 people and injured 9 others with a rifle at a San Diego elementary school. When asked why she did it, her response was, "I just don't like Mondays." In 1973, a Hindu man named Amar Bharati raised his hand as a religious gesture and hasn't put it down ever since. He spent 2 years of his life in severe pain by doing this, but eventually lost all sensation in his arm until it just stayed up. In 2012, Anthony Hensley was kayaking in Illinois when he went to check on a swan that was becoming aggressive toward him, causing him to fall out of his kayak. As Anthony tried swimming back to shore, the Swan kept relentlessly attacking him until the man sadly drowned. In the 1920s, there was a health drink called Radithor that literally contained radium mixed with water. Its manufacturer claimed the radioactive drink not only provided energy, but also cured a host of ailments including cancer and depression. But the drink was eventually pulled from shelves in 1932 when it started causing its customers' jaws to fall off. While working as a doctor in Canada, John Schneeberger drugged and sexually assaulted one of his patients as well as his own stepdaughter. But he was able to evade arrest for years by implanting a plastic tube in his arm that was filled with another man's blood. The Burnden Park disaster was a human crush that occurred in 1946 at Burnden Park Football Stadium in England. Overcrowding resulted in the deaths of 33 people and injuries to hundreds more. The bodies were then left on the sidelines covered with coats, and the game was later resumed and finished with the corpses still on the field. This was the last photo ever taken of Brooklyn freediver Nicholas Mavoli after attempting to set the American record for freediving at 236 feet deep. He completed the dive and resurfaced, gave the OK sign, attempted to speak, and then passed out. He never regained consciousness and died later that day from pulmonary edema. Dr. Joseph Guillotine was against executions but knew they would happen regardless. So he popularized the guillotine to make executions as quick and painless as possible. Unfortunately, it wasn't as humane as he'd thought, since it was later discovered that the human head can remain conscious for up to 20 seconds after being decapitated. This is a photo of Lyndon B. Johnson being sworn in as president just 2 hours after JFK was assassinated, while standing next to Jackie Kennedy, whose clothes were still stained by her husband's blood. LBJ turned to his friend Albert Thomas and smiled while Thomas smirked and winked back. The White House photographer who took this later called the photograph completely sinister. In 2004, Thomas and Jackie Hawks decided to sell their 55-foot yacht to spend more time with their family. Soon enough, former Power Rangers actor Skylar Delian contacted the couple saying he was interested in purchasing. Tom and Jackie were suspicious of Skylar at first, but they became more receptive when his pregnant wife Jennifer and their other child came to the next meeting, so they agreed to take him on a test run of the boat. Skylar brought with him 2 associates who, unbeknownst to Tom and Jackie, turned out to be former convicts. Once they were on the boat, the 3 men beat Thomas and Jackie, overpowered them with tasers, tied them up, and forced Thomas to sign the yacht away to Skylar. Afterwards, they tied the couple to the boat's anchor and threw them overboard to drown. Their bodies were never recovered. Days afterwards, Delian tried to empty the couple's bank account, but the entire plot was soon foiled when the accomplices confessed to the heinous murders. Thankfully, Skylar and Jennifer Delian will now spend the rest of their lives rotting away in prison. As a child star, Drew Barrymore was thrust into the dark side of Hollywood at a very young age. Her mother started bringing her to dance clubs when she was only 9 years old, letting her dance with older men and even use hard drugs. She understandably struggled to cope with this extremely early exposure to adult vices, since she was forced into a 6-month rehab program by the age of 13, and then spent the next 18 months in a mental hospital after attempting to take her own life. After a tiger escaped from a Georgia zoo and killed a man in 2015, a PSA was issued on what not to do if you ever encounter a tiger. Don't approach it, don't run away, and definitely don't urinate. In an attempt to escape a forceful arranged marriage with her cousin, 21-year-old Pakistani woman Asia Bibi poisoned a container of milk at a family party, hoping that only her fiancé would drink it. But instead, it was used by Bibi's mother-in-law to make a dessert drink for the entire family. It was then served to 27 members of Bibi's family, killing 17 of them. There's a tribe in the Amazon rainforest that performs the most painful coming-of-age ritual known to man. In order to enter manhood, the boys must wear gloves containing hundreds of bullet ants for 5 to 10 minutes. The ants are woven into the gloves with their stingers pointing inwards, so the hand is immediately attacked with a barrage of excruciating stings. According to the Schmidt Pain Index, the sting is ranked as the most painful in all of nature, described as similar to being shot, as the boy's arm is often paralyzed for days following the ritual. In order to pass, he must endure the process without shedding a single tear, otherwise he has to start over another day. In some cases, it may take up to 20 attempts to fully complete the horrific ritual. In 1996, mountain climber Beck Weathers and his team attempted to scale Mount Everest. But after coming down with a bad case of snow blindness, Weathers got stuck in a severe blizzard with a wind chill of negative 100 degrees and soon fell into a hypothermic coma. He miraculously survived, but had to have his nose and both hands amputated as a result of severe frostbite. Nicknamed Mr. Titanic, this was the last photo taken of French diver and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. He saw the Titanic 37 different times before dying on his 38th trip on board OceanGate's Titan submersible. In 1986, a young Indian flight attendant named Nirja Banat was on a plane that was hijacked. The terrorists were targeting Americans, so she hid the passports of all 44 Americans on board. Instead of saving herself, she helped the other passengers escape and died while shielding 3 children from a hail of gunfire. One of those children is now a captain for a major airline and says that Banat was his #1 inspiration. For most of his life, former jock Jason Paget believed that math was stupid and pointless. But that all changed in 2002 when he was badly beaten outside of a karaoke bar, resulting in a severe concussion. The very next day, he suddenly woke up and had miraculously become a math genius. Thanks to an extremely rare condition called acquired savant syndrome, Jason could now see the world in complex geometric shapes and fractals. Here's a 1923 photo of Russian leader Vladimir Lenin, by which point he had suffered 3 strokes and was completely mute. In 2012, Anthony Omari took a machete to the face while defending a Kenyan orphanage against attacking thieves. He saved 37 orphans, and his story helped raise over $80,000 for the orphanage. Many houses that people say are haunted have been found to contain high levels of carbon monoxide or other poisons that can cause hallucinations. This may explain why haunted houses are usually older homes, which are more likely to contain old and defective appliances. In 1994, 31-year-old Gloria Ramirez was admitted to a California hospital with symptoms thought to be related to her cervical cancer. She was acting extremely confused and her heart rate was rising rapidly as medical staff did everything they could to return her vital signs to normal. But eventually, nurses noticed a strange oily sheen on Gloria's body, as well as a fruity, garlicky scent emitting from her mouth. Her drawn blood smelled like ammonia and had strange tan-colored particles floating in it. Soon enough, the nurses were having breathing issues and began passing out just from being around her body. Within a few hours, 23 people fell ill and 5 were admitted to the hospital. Ramirez ended up dying from kidney failure and a hazmat crew was called in to transport her body. It turned out she had been taking the extremely toxic substance dimethylsulfone as a home remedy to treat her cancer, the most likely explanation for her poisonous body. In 2007, Navy SEAL Mike Day was shot 27 times by 4 members of Al-Qaeda before being knocked out by a grenade. Not only did he survive, but Mike even ended up killing all 4 of the militants and walked away on his own after regaining consciousness. Squeezing someone's testicles very tightly can have roughly the same effect as using an EpiPen, but I wouldn't suggest doing this because it could also kill them. Your body is the weakest from 3 to 4 a.m., making this the time when most people die in their sleep. Dutchman Dirk Willems was a religious prisoner who escaped his execution in 1569. When the guard chasing him fell through the ice in a nearby river, Willems turned around to save him. He was then recaptured and burned at the stake. In 1935, Grace McDaniels became a circus freak show star known as the Mule-Faced Woman and was paid $175 per week. Her severe facial deformity was caused by a cancerous lip tumor that ended up taking her life in 1958. In the 12th century Catholic Church, innocence was judged by dunking the suspect's hand in a pot of boiling water. If God had not healed the wound within 3 days, the suspect was found guilty of the crime. In November of 2004, Peter Porco was struck in the head 16 times with an axe while he was asleep in his New York home. But he miraculously woke up the next morning, made breakfast and coffee for himself, and finally fell dead while picking up his newspaper. He had been completely unaware of his battered state and the pools of blood all around him. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a brother named Maynard who was favored by their Nazi father but died in a drunk driving crash when he was 24. Arnold didn't attend his brother's funeral or his father's. In 1980, a Las Vegas hospital had to suspend workers for betting on when patients would die. One nurse was even accused of murdering a patient so she would win. The extremely venomous blue-ringed octopus has enough venom to kill 10 grown adults. Its deadly neurotoxin can result in patients being fully aware of their surroundings but unable to move. Because of the paralysis, you have no way of signaling for help or indicating distress. There's no anti-venom for the bite, but if you can get a ventilator to breathe for you for 16 hours, you will survive with no side effects. In 2012, the cruise ship Costa Concordia collided with a rock off the coast of Italy, resulting in 32 deaths. When asked why he abandoned the ship while his passengers were either dying or trying to escape, the captain's excuse was that he fell into a lifeboat. He received 16 years in prison for his role in the tragedy. On one night when Charlize Theron was 16 years old, her drunken alcoholic father was firing bullets into the door to her room, threatening to kill her and her mom. While he was reloading, Charlize's mother grabbed her own handgun and killed him. The shooting was ruled as self-defense and she didn't face any charges. In 1704, Sir Isaac Newton predicted that the world as we know it would end around the year 2060. He believed humanity would then progress into an era of divinely inspired peace. A tiger's tongue is so rough that it can lick your skin off with only a few licks. At over 3,500 years old, the Senator was the name of the oldest bald cypress tree and the 5th oldest tree in the world overall. But it was accidentally burned down in 2012 when 26-year-old Sarah Barnes lit a fire inside the tree to see the meth she was about to smoke. Gordon Ramsay's father was a violent alcoholic who regularly abused he and his mother. One of his favorite things to do was to call Gordon a gay little boy because cooking was for poofs. He became so aggressive at times that Gordon and his mom often feared for their lives while at home. In 2017, a 9 weeks pregnant Brazilian woman suffered a stroke and was declared legally dead. Although doctors said the babies had no hope for survival, the brain-dead woman was kept alive for 123 days before delivering a healthy pair of twins. After growing up with a chronically bloated stomach, Sanju Bhagat went to the ER in 2006 with severe abdominal pain and difficulty breathing. Doctors were astonished to discover that the twin he must have absorbed in utero was still living in his abdomen and surviving off his blood supply. The half-formed twin had limbs, long fingernails, hair, and even genitalia. Doctors eventually removed the parasite and Bhagat made a full recovery. After learning from biological tests that Michael Jackson may not have been her real father, Paris Jackson attempted to take her own life. She said she idolized her father so much that the 2013 news led to her overdosing on pills and cutting her wrists before she was saved by the hospital. Firefighters in Illinois found a cockroach infestation so massive that they were forced to burn the house to the ground. They even made a ring of fire around the home so that none of them could escape or move to neighboring houses. After years of suffering from a constant runny nose, Kendra Jackson eventually found out that it was fluid leaking from her brain. After a serious car accident in 2013, she'd been losing about a half pint of brain fluid through her nose each day. There's a botanical garden in the UK filled only with plants that can kill you. It's only available through guided tours, during which many people have fainted due to the toxic fumes emitted by the flora. It holds over 100 deadly plants and is classified as the most dangerous garden in the world. In 2013, Zac Efron was running through his house with socks on when he suddenly slipped. He smashed his face into the corner of a granite fountain so hard that it shattered his jaw and nearly killed him. He was immediately knocked unconscious, and when he woke up, part of his chin was hanging off his face. In response to more recent plastic surgery rumors, Zac claimed that his cheek muscles overgrew to compensate for the muscles that were permanently damaged from that injury. Union Army soldier Jacob Miller was shot in the forehead during the Civil War. Left for dead, he somehow woke up a few hours later and lived on for another 54 years. Mac Ray Evans was a serial killer who used to work for Caltrans throughout the 1950s and 60s. He'd bury his victims, who were mostly children, in places where he would later help build the highways on top of. Many of his victims were never found and are likely still under some of the California highways that thousands of people drive over each day. One day in the summer of 1984, James Huberty told his wife Etna that he believed he was developing a mental health problem. 2 days later, he asked for an appointment at a San Diego mental health clinic. But the call was logged as a non-crisis since Huberty sounded very polite and stated that he'd never experienced any mental health issues in the past, so he didn't receive a call back that day. The next morning, while at the San Diego Zoo with his family, Huberty told his wife that his life was effectively over. Referring to the clinic's failure to return his phone call, he said society had their chance. Upon returning home, he leaned toward his wife and said, "I want to kiss you goodbye. I'm going hunting for humans." While holding a gun across his shoulder walking out the door, Huberty told his daughter Zelia, "Goodbye, I won't be back." He then drove to the parking lot of a McDonald's near his home and opened fire. James fatally shot 21 people and wounded 19 others before being killed by a police sniper 77 minutes later. Woody Harrelson's father, Charles, was a professional hitman who once assassinated a federal judge. He was even accused of being involved in the JFK assassination in 1963. A Russian man who tried to rob a hair salon ended up being the victim when the female shop owner overpowered him. She tied him up naked and ended up using him as her sex slave for several days. 21-year-old Japanese woman Nakano Takiko was one of the last remaining samurai warriors. When she was fatally wounded during the Battle of Aizu in 1868, she asked her sister to cut off her head so that her enemies couldn't take it as a trophy. BTK killer Dennis Rader used to install security systems for homeowners. Many of his clients wanted the security systems to prevent the BTK killer from ever entering their homes, unaware that he was the very person installing them. In the 17th century, Lazarus Colorado was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, but he was later pardoned over a strange technicality thanks to his parasitic twin. Lazarus argued that the death would kill his twin, who was innocent. A jury agreed and the man was released. In 1968, radical feminist Valerie Solanas attempted to assassinate Andy Warhol. She shot him in the liver, spleen, lungs, and stomach, leaving him in a corset for the rest of his life. The woman turned out to be a schizophrenic who called for the extermination of males to create a utopia for women. According to a 1996 Super Mario manga, 1-up mushrooms grow from the bodies of dead Marios, perpetuating the cycle of life and death. In 1971, Fleetwood Mac had to cancel a sold-out show when their guitarist Jeremy Spencer suddenly went missing. He was found a few weeks later with shabby clothes and a shaven head after joining the Children of God, a cult founded by a pedophile that was responsible for the widespread abuse of thousands of children.